Born to a common family in the lowlands of Qo'noS' Ketha province and far from the nefarious politicking of the Council's great houses, few would have thought that a young Martok would become one of the most celebrated names not just in Klingon society, but the galaxy as a whole. First technically appearing, more on that later, in DS9's Season 4 episode The Way of the Warrior, the bombastic Martok's nuanced blending of the bloodthirsty and the honourable that make up the quintessential Klingon endeared him to production staff and fans alike. In an already crowded field of memorable supporting characters, Martok's appearances, brought to life by the gravel-throated vivacity of J.G. Hertzler, would prove to be the highlights again and again. Behind the scenes, there is much more than meets the eye, okay, sorry Martok, to this particular Klingon. From his lowly origins through the horrors of the Dominion War and all the way to the heights of Klingon society, these are the parts of Martok's journey, both within and without the Trek universe, that make him who he is. I'm Sean Ferrick for TrekCulture, and here are 10 things you didn't know about Martok. Number 10. J.G. Hertzler nearly didn't get the part. Casting is a tricky business in any franchise, let alone one where actors have to portray characters with decades of lore and backstory behind them. When it came time to cast a famed Klingon general, the production crew of DS9 had a gargantuan task in front of them. First appearing as captain of the doomed USS Saratoga in DS9's pilot episode, J.G. Hertzler would go on to audition for several Star Trek parts before Martok's first appearance, being passed over enough times that he considered giving up on the franchise altogether. Having been convinced to return by casting director Ron Surma, Hertzler originally opted for a less cliché take on the race, instead opting for a refined take that he called Patrick Stewart as a Klingon. When the casting team weren't convinced and asked for a more traditional take on a Klingon, Hertzler complied by hurling a metal chair against a plaster wall, ripping his thumbnail and drawing blood in the process. A few days later, the part was his. Number 9. He was almost a single-episode character. Although Martok would go on to become one of Trek's most recurring characters, appearing frequently in DS9, cameoing in Lower Decks, and getting a name check in Picard, the character was originally planned to go no further than his debut. Following the cataclysmic events of DS9's Season 4 opener, The Way of the Warrior, and the beginning of Federation Klingon hostilities, the subject of a Changeling infiltrator in the Alpha Quadrant became a recurring theme. Suspicions ultimately spiraled around Chancellor Gowron, with a plot to expose him kicking off in Season 5. However, whilst Gowron was indeed written to be the interloper throughout the season, the writers decided instead to make Martok the Changeling. This was partly as a way to shock the fans, and partly as a means to bring back Hertzler, following his impressive performance in The Way of the Warrior. Sure enough, he would return again in Purgatory's Shadow as the original Martok, imprisoned by the Dominion, and his return to glory delighted fans far and wide. Number 8. The House of Martok is larger than you think. Coming from poor beginnings and not belonging to any great house, details on Martok's origins and ancestry are left sparse in universe, but only the names Urthok and Kriegar conflictingly given for his father in apocryphal novels. In the time frame of DS9, however, the House of Martok stands in high regards within Klingon society, with his nobly born wife Sorella and son Drex both appearing during the series' run. During her appearance, prior to a brief but brilliantly scathing array of insults, Martok refers to Sorella as the mother of his children, implying that Drex has at least one sibling. The house would later be joined by Worf and by association his son Alexander, his wife Jadzia, her successor to the Dax symbiont Ezri, and, surprisingly, the human Jeremy Astor, with whom Worf performed the Rustai Brotherhood ritual following the death of Jeremy's mother in the Next Generation episode, The Bonding. Number 7. He nearly got his eye back. When the real Martok first appears in the Jem'Hadar prison camp during an In Purgatory's Shadow, the key difference separating him from his changeling doppelganger is his missing left eye, likely caused by constant sparring from the training entertainment of the Jem'Hadar. Upon his return to active duty on the front lines in the Dominion War, producer Ira Stephen Bear suggested to Hertzler that they restore the eye, but Hertzler refused, saying that a Klingon warrior would not care how many eyes he had, and that it would serve as a reminder for Martok of what he had endured in that camp, spurring him on in his conflict with the Jem'Hadar, who had taken his eye from him. Although Hertzler has since admitted that the decision may have been influenced by Christopher Plummer's similarly monocular Chang in The Undiscovered Country, it was enough to convince Bear, and Martok didn't get so much as an eye patch for the rest of the war. Number 6. His animosity towards Kor was influenced by J.G. Hertzler. As is often the case with Star Trek, the characterization and backstory surrounding long-running characters is heavily influenced both by the writers and the actors themselves. Whilst the actors are always tasked with bringing the script to life, it's not uncommon for them to have a part in the writing itself. In the 7th season episode, Once More Under the Breach, Martok is forced to bring the senile Kor onto a ship as a favour to Worf. It is revealed that Kor's classist prejudices stifled Martok's military career in his youth and led to a long-standing animosity towards the legendary Dahar Master. In the original script, Martok's story of this dishonor ends there, but Hertzler himself added the line, "Unfortunately, my father did not live to see that day," justifying his undying hatred as one in honor of his family. It was also Hertzler's suggestion that Martok not join in the singing in honor of Kor's memory in the episode's finale. Instead of the honorable Klingon overcoming his pride, these decisions paint a much more nuanced, morally fallible image and a more well-rounded character as a result. Number 5. His missing eye almost caused a big accident. Ask any Trek actor with an alien character and you'll undoubtedly get some stories as to just how much makeup and prosthesis influenced their performances. With Hertzler's insistence that Martok would not accept an artificial eye following his return to the Alpha Quadrant, the actor would spend the next several years with a patch of latex covering his left eye. Whilst this would prove to be thematically significant, problems began on set with Hertzler immediately losing both part of his left visual field and a fair amount of depth perception alongside it. Although stunt performers could take on the more physically demanding parts of the performance, a notable instance occurred when filming a scene with Worf. During rehearsal, Hertzler had no issues following direction as he ran across frame, but nobody had considered that once rehearsal had finished, there would be a camera sat squarely in what would have been his line of sight. Needless to say, there was a fair amount of suffering for your art. Number 4. He isn't just popular on Qo'noS. As the Dominion War rages on in the later seasons of DS9's run, Martok's standing within the Empire rises higher and higher, as his resolve both in victory and defeat serves as emblematic of the Klingons' honourable combat with their hated foes. Martok becomes so popular in the show's final season that Chancellor Gowron himself attempts to bring the general down, ironically putting events in motion which lead to Martok's ascension to chancellorship. In fact, Martok's popularity was not just limited to the universe of Trek itself, as he has proven to be held in equally high regard by the fandom. Sci-Fi included Martok in their 2015 list of the most interesting supporting characters, before ranking him the best and most Klingon-y Klingon in the franchise in 2019. Ranking Trek characters overall, Screen Rant placed Martok as 12th in 2016, and in between Worf at 13 and Sarek at 11. Number 3. His death kickstarts the events of Star Trek Online. Despite its questionable canonicity, Star Trek Online has proven to be an incredibly popular game within the fandom, who've spent the last 14 years exploring every facet of the MMORPG's various chapters and missions. Beginning 22 years after the destruction of Romulus, as seen in the original timeline of 2009's Star Trek movie, the game sees the galaxy at war as the Federation-hating Jempok murders Martok and takes the chancellorship. Tearing up the Khitomer Accords, Jempok plunges the Empire into aggressive expansion, swallowing territory from both the Gorn and the beleaguered Romulans, coming to blows with the Federation over their violent hostility. Unbeknownst to Jempok, Martok is alive and is rescued by the player in the mission Brushfire. Although he does not seek to return to his position in charge of the Council, he resumes the rank of General and accompanies the player on many missions, including the overthrow of Jempok alongside the new Chancellor, a clone of Star Trek Discovery's L'Rell. So just another normal day on Qo'noS then, really. Number 2. His chancellorship is one marked by civil war. At the end of DS9, with the Dominion War over, Martok returns to Qo'noS to truly take up his role as Chancellor, taking Worf with him as the Federation's ambassador. As is often the case with popular Trek characters, this would not be the end of the story, and would be explored in many novels following the series' end. One of the most notable novels to feature Martok is The Left Hand of Destiny, co-written by Hertzler himself. Arthurian in scope and Shakespearean in tone, the novel opens with the destruction of the Great Hall of Qo'noS and chronicles the events in a violent coup by the brutal but enigmatic Morjod, leading into a civil war full of destruction, revelations, and a return for the legendary Sword of Kahless. We won't spoil any major plot points here, suffice it to say the novel is essential reading for fans who don't want DS9 to simply be what we leave behind. Number 1. He has a rap. Not the sentence you were expecting to hear in this video, was it? Following the series wrap, no pun intended, of DS9, J.G. Hertzler and Gowron actor Robert O'Reilly would spend a great deal of time at various conventions across the world, frequently together and, on the odd occasion, in makeup, in character, or both. With so much time together, the actors took the somewhat left-field decision to record an in-character hip-hop album titled Kling Bling, unveiling it to bewildered fans in 2005. The album has since become a famously ridiculous bit of the Trek fandom. More on brand than Leonard Nimoy's Ballad of Bilbo Baggins and light years of more self-aware than anything from William Shatner, Hertzler and O'Reilly have performed songs from the album at numerous conventions over the years, even being joined by TNG's Beitor at a 50th anniversary event in 2016. That's everything for our list today, folks. Thank you so much for watching along. Thank you, Nick Edgeworth, who wrote the article upon which this is based. You legend. Please let us know in the comments below if you enjoyed this, and please make sure that you're following us on the various socials. I'm at Sean Ferrick, you can catch me, and don't forget to follow at TrekCulture on the various socials as well. Until I see you again, look after yourself, live long and prosper, Qapla'. Thanks very much.